This
at the end.
conference will now be recorded.
Dave, you were saying you weren't up there for the earthquake, or when the earthquake occurred in Alaska?
No. We went up there and did interviews and shot video back in late April and early May.
Oh.
But I did take a walk to Earthquake Park while I was there.
I believe I read that Alaska has really very frequent earthquakes.
They do. They're the most seismically active state in the U.S.
Impressive.
Yeah, I noticed the other day, looking at the earthquake map, that there were a bunch of them all clustered around the big one.
Yeah, a lot of aftershocks there. I think they've had over 1,200 of them.
Wow.
It's a real bummer too this time of year because they only have about 4 hours of sunlight. Hey, Karen, I guess whenever you want, we can get started. Looks like we have a number of people on the line now, which is great.
Yes. Yeah, we can go ahead and get started then. Well, welcome everybody. We're early December now, getting ready for the January ESIP winter meeting, which will be in Bethesda, Maryland, in the Washington, D.C. area. And of course, there's a lot going on this month and early January with a number of conferences and some preparation, not to mention just a busy time of year all in all. I guess Jessica and I are going to be talking about the AGU presentation after this session. So we've got, a paper looking at our ORL work for AGU presentation there. And Bob, you're the convener.
Yes.
On the convener list for that session. So.
Yeah, looking forward to your presentation.
Yeah, thank you. We're going to be kind of leveraging the background material for why we're doing ORLs based on our really successful webinar last month, and then kind of looking forward, looking to the future, some of the things we need to address in terms of communicating trusted data to the disasters community. But we really want to focus today on the winter meeting so that we can use the next few weeks to invite some people to participate. So I went back to the September 6th, our conference call on September 6th. We really had a very good discussion about a number of related topics to ORL and different groups that are looking at trusted data and really what trusted data means in different communities. In many environments, trust has to do with security and to some extent authorization, that the data is authoritative. And So we're going to be exploring that, those differences, and see if there are areas, other groups that are looking at similar topics that we can either collaborate with or align with to the extent that our goals are in common, and then at least inform other groups about what we're doing and continue to kind of build support for ORLs and kind of move the ORL concept from a definition to kind of a framework of how you implement ORLs for different communities, because I think that's the future direction, since we've kind of recognized that the data, the level of trust that our operational users will have in the data will be very dependent on the problem they're solving, which we can clarify with a use case. So we have our scenario, problem identification, identifying, discovering and identifying relevant data, evaluating it, and then developing a pipeline for immediate access to that data when disaster occurs. So this agenda, so that Jessica's got it up here on the shared screen, were more talks than we can actually do in our 90-minute session. We're going to be, I believe we're still scheduled for January 16th at 4 o'clock. That was the tentative date and time for our session. It worked out well Wednesday afternoon. It worked out well for Dave, who's going to be, which state are you going to be in, Dave? I think you're going to be out west someplace.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. I'm going to be out in Colorado running the Weather and Climate Summit for broadcast meteorologists.
Right. Yeah, and I guess that meeting is always in Colorado and kind of lines up.
Yeah, it has been. Maybe different next year, but for this year, we still have to deal with it. Most of our sessions will be over by noon Colorado time, so then I can move over to another room and jump on the webinar.
Yeah. So this will be, I guess, around 2 o'clock Colorado time. So anyway, as far as I know, this is the good time that we're going to have. And so these topics, kind of grouped them, wanted to kind of start out with presenting just a short, not more than 10 minutes, highlights of some of the things that we've done this year. I think our cluster has been very productive this year, both in work that individuals have done and have been sharing with us, and in our collaborative work over the summer in really refining ORL concepts and seeing it actually being used. So highlights about what we've accomplished, who we've been working with, both East Coast and West Coast activities, and any points in between. And then the other talk here, we have been contacted by Carola Kaiser, who's at Louisiana State. And so she is quite interested in getting to know ESIP better and maybe joining our group and joining ESIP. But we thought that it would be really a good opportunity to see the kind of work that she's doing. And Dave, do you want to say just a couple things about her work? I know she talked to you and about the potential of it incorporating some of these products in the dashboard that's been developed for the all hazards community.
Sure. Sure. Corolla is at LSU, and they have a partnership with North Carolina's University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and also Texas, University of Texas at Austin, where they use their 3 supercomputers to run the AdCirc storm surge model. And this model, they've now optimized enough and have gotten to the point where they can actually run high resolution storm surge predictions based on the official National Hurricane Center forecast, and have that information available about an hour and a half to about between an hour and a half and 2 hours after the official forecast is released, which is really in a position to help emergency managers and those who are conducting evacuations to get a good handle on storm surge. And so we have talked with Corolla and some others about how to get access to that storm surge output into the dashboard, into GeoCollaborate, so more people can access it and combine it with other data sets. And so even the utility industry is quite interested in finding out more details about this, because the AdCirc model is something that allows the user to create a scenario, like if the storm were to hit 10 miles or 15 miles further north or further south or further east or west, and the model could then regenerate potential storm surge results if the storm were to make a turn. So it's all in all, it's interesting information, and Corolla is very interested in finding out more about trusted data, ORL levels, the work that we're doing in the disaster lifecycle cluster, and it should be pretty good to hear what she has to say at the meeting. That's it, Karen.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So, so those were kind of the talks to kick off, and then to talk about ORLs and kind of the rationale and the need for ORLs. So we thought about inviting Greg McShane. Department of Homeland Security has the National Infrastructure Coordinating Center that he directs, I believe. And he's been active with the All Hazards Consortium lately and has been a fairly enthusiastic supporter of the idea of operational readiness levels from a Homeland Security point of view. He sees it as a private sector initiative, as opposed to a government. So in a way, operational readiness levels are, kind of coming from the ground up, from the community, and FEMA and others in DHS have been really focused on being more very responsive to the community. So we thought that we could invite him, he's local to the area, to join us and talk about how he sees operational readiness levels and their potential role in the objectives of his NIC, infrastructure coordination, which is, of course, during events and hazard disasters and the like. So if we can get him, I think that would be really nice to hear from a non-data person who is really welcoming in this idea of having this way of identifying trusted data with ORLs.
Karen?
Yeah.
If Greg can't make it, maybe one of those others, I think he brought a few with him, to that meeting in DC. One of those others from DHS might be able to fill in for him.
Oh, that's a good point. I think, Dave, you were, after we have today's meeting, when we kind of finalize our agenda, and you thought, or we thought you could follow up with Greg, and so that might be an option that Greg might have someone. Although, alternatively, if Greg, could even call in to join us, would be best if he could, could be there for the session. But
Yeah, I'll definitely check with them tomorrow, Karen. I was just waiting for any other input or ideas. If somebody said, oh, no, let's have this person or whatever, I didn't want to contact Greg until everybody thought that was a good idea. But I can certainly contact him tomorrow, find out if he's open and available on that day. And if he is, he may be quite interested. I was just on a briefing about an hour and a half ago via webinar with Tom Rand and the All Hazards Consortium, and he was just talking about a lot of exciting plans with DHS in 2019. So I suspect Greg is very much engaged and would love to participate, but we'll see if he's available.
Great. Okay, and then the other part that supports this communication of trusted data is our discussion about terminology and vocabularies, and the fact that different communities tend to have different words that they use, sometimes for similar kinds of events, and sometimes they have very unique situations that they deal with. So we had this idea of doing a natural language processing evaluation of community of documentation that comes from various communities, and so this is something that we had proposed as a funding Friday, and whether which we didn't get the support to follow up, but I'm pretty sure that I listed Sophie who here from NCAR. I talked with her at the summer meeting, and I'm pretty sure she has some experience in doing this kind of work. The natural language processing really has a way of extracting semantics and producing an output that can show us the semantic relationships between different terms. This is my understanding. So potentially one idea would be to invite Sophie to come. She's very active in ESIP. She heads up the co-chairs the usability cluster, and so there might be she might talk to us about what we could learn by doing this. Alternatively, like as I point out here, this could be something that we do as a separate, invite her to one of our telecoms and follow up through a webinar kind of activity. So that was kind of another data point about communicating trusted data. Maybe what we could do, if there's any comments or feedback, please feel free to speak up. We could go through all of these. There's more than we can handle, so might get some feedback as to how to prioritize the talks that we could bring forward. Okay, well, why don't we go on to the next section? This is where I had really extracted. Jessica, if you could move the page up a little bit so that we can see the talks to help crosswalk ORL and other efforts for communicating data value to end users. So, yeah, so there are potentially 4 topics there that I extracted from our previous conversation back in September. So we have analysis ready data, and this is something that Don Sullivan had brought forward, and there's definitely work at Landsat. They have a website addressing that topic. They were using this information or this approach to identify the Landsat products, and it really made a lot of sense there when you may want to go analyze a previous view from Landsat and do comparisons with the current view. So that was something that was pretty readily available just by looking at their front page, their home page. But could be very interesting to get somebody from Landsat to talk about how they're using analysis-ready data, what kind of, what ways they've gone about to communicate Landsat data then to potential analysis partners, people, these users that would want to go in and use Landsat products to do analysis with their own current information. So there might be some good insights that we could get from the ARD team at Landsat. Another topic that was raised, Phil Balin has joined us on several occasions and working with Maggie at the Earthquake Clearinghouse, and they developed a request form for the emergency managers who really don't necessarily know very much about the sensors that are on these satellites that are capable of collecting earthquake data. So he said that they have a request form that was intended to really simplify basically communicating what what those sensors can do in a way that the emergency managers could readily relate to. So that looked like a potentially interesting approach that ORLs might be able to, our work with ORLs might be able to see some common benefits in their approach with what we're trying to do.
Karen, this is Maggie. I have a quick question about that. Is that the request form that has been developed by the NASA Disasters Program in conjunction with the Clearinghouse to help to do the request for airborne sensor requests?
It could very well be. I do not know. I'm just really basing my information here on what was shared with what he shared with us, and it definitely focused on improving the way that requests could be made to your team from community, so that you would be the recipient of the results of this request form.
Right, and I think that this might be the one that we're working with them on to improve the availability or the ability actually to request the data. So I think that this might be the request form that we're working with them on. And what he would like to do is have sort of a pre-populated form in the case of, say, a Hayward event, so that it's already ready to go, since we sort of already know where the AOIs are and what sensors we might want to fly, et cetera, so that it's all ready to go ahead of time. So this might be what he was talking about.
That does sound like it. Yeah, and he really emphasized, the distinction between the emergency managers not knowing the details about the sensor, but knowing that they wanted to get the data product.
Right.
So it does sound like that is what he was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so sharing that with our group, again, so that we can, kind of see, this is another community, earthquakes, but to see how, how that information was communicated to the emergency managers.
Sure, that's something we could do.
Terrific. And then the next potential topic here is getting somebody from OGC their report on. They held 2 workshops addressing their disaster interoperability concept study, which was funded by DHS and another federal agency. And the report, I understand, is coming out maybe next week. And so if there were aspects, we could potentially ask Luis or perhaps even Don Sullivan to go through the document and see if there are, any pointers, recommendations, or lessons learned about bridging that communications gap between, people developing these sophisticated data products and the users who want to use them for decision making. If we could kind of extract some pointers from that document, it's a potential source. And then the other one that was brought up really just at the end by Bob Downs, and Bob, you didn't say very much about it, but the maturity matrix. And maybe you could say just a little more now and let us know if you think this would be appropriate here.
Yeah, well, there are several different instruments now that are being adopted to measure the maturity and also the potential for using data. And a lot of them are data focused. There's really so many of them, but I could be glad to give an overview of some of the different ones that are out there, and also differentiate between those and the ones that are focusing more on the infrastructure, because there is a little bit of overlap between them, but for the most part, they're either in one camp or the other. So there are really lots of different ones out there. It's surprising that there are so many. It'd be nice if some of them merged, but I'm not sure we're going to see that in the near future. But yeah, if you think that would be valuable to talk about some of these other measures that are being used and how they're being used, I would be glad to do, an overview of some of them and contrast them so that we could compare that with the ORLs, for example.
Yeah, I think especially if there is a reasonable overlap with uh, the the objectives of ORLs, which really is to encapsulate the features of the data uh, that make it usable for a particular use case. So yeah, that because I think a lot of the repository issues um, are going to be internal to you know, the maintenance and the support of the data so that it continues to be there. Those kinds of issues that are not going to be relevant to, not directly relevant to the usability question. Those kinds of things about the robustness of the service are important, but they're not going to be the usability question. That our users are going to assume that those are given, and what they're really focused on are the qualities that eliminate the usability for that particular problem that they're trying to solve. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Yes, it does. I can be flexible. That is, if you get too many on the program, I could hold back until the next one, or if you think you need me, just let me know a couple of weeks in advance, you know, so I can start to put something together.
Okay, well, those are the 4 areas, and let me see, if we had, I sort of left them all at like 10-minute talks. If we were to do all 8 talks, that would be 80 minutes. I don't know.
Hey,
Let's
Karen.
get feedback on this. Yeah.
Sounds like with all Bob has to do, it sounds like he wants to take a little pass on this one. Is that right, Bob?
No, I can go either way. I just
Okay.
need a couple weeks notice so that I can put something together.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just didn't want to have any extra, work thrown on you since you're doing so much at AGU and all that sort of stuff.
And yeah, and I don't really know if we'll be able to get well, if there is specific enough feedback from the OGC report. Well, it seems likely. It seems likely that they would have a little bit of input there.
Karen,
So,
did you I know you sent an email to those guys. Did they say that the report was going to be out next week?
I did ask Don, and he said that's what they're telling him. I think he said December 14th.
Hi, Karen. This is Don. I just sent an email or a chat to everybody. It's been released. It's being typeset. Should be out today or tomorrow.
Oh, cool.
Awesome.
Don,
Way to go, Don.
yeah, great. Don, what do you think? Do you think that there would be a 10-minute briefing that someone might be able to give us about focusing on the idea of communicating trusted data that might have come out of the work?
I'm sure there is. I came in a little late. I had an overlapping meeting. I apologize. So I'm missing the context. Give a 10-minute briefing when?
We are discussing the ESIP winter meeting.
Oh, absolutely. That's what my guess is. Yeah, absolutely. They'd be able to.
Okay. Okay, great.
Actually, if you could give them, if you could give them more than 10 minutes, they'd probably appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, that's so what we have is a 90-minute session. We're in the middle of January for the ESIP winter meeting, and our session will be in the afternoon. We're actually at the end of the middle day there, Wednesday, I believe, and we can run over a little bit, depending on how patient everybody else
Yeah.
is.
Or lacking that, what I'm sure they'll do is present a written briefing too, and then a short oral presentation. I'll be meeting with folks from the at the ESIP winter meeting. Yeah, I'll be meeting with some folks talking about this on this Sunday actually.
On Sunday. Wow. Don, if I could, I will give you the details in a short email, and maybe if you could invite them on my behalf.
Be glad to.
Say that would be wonderful.
Yeah, be glad to. No problem at all.
Great, great. Okay, so Don, I don't know how much you captured, but for the winter meeting, we're really dedicated, planning to dedicate the bulk of it to address a topic that you were the one who actually introduced to us back in September, this crosswalk of the ORL activities with other activities that are looking at communicating with end users, the value and trust of a data. So
excellent, cool.
Yeah. So did you hear any of the remarks about analysis ready data?
I heard just the last couple of minutes of it, but yes, I did hear some.
Yeah. I wonder if you have any contacts at Landsat that you might recommend we follow up with.
Let me ask them, and I'll get back to you.
All right. That's fair. Appreciate it. All right. So I think in this area we might indeed. Yes.
Sorry. I just remember I went to a talk at the ESIP summer meeting, and there were people from Landsat who were talking specifically about this. So maybe one of those people might be interested, since they might already be going. So I can look up and see who those speakers were.
Okay. So you can do that. That's Jessica, right?
Yes. Hi.
That'd be great, Jessica. I wonder if one of the people is Lindsay. She was, I spoke with her at the CDAC UWG meeting, and she was really interested in how to make more LPDAC data available.
I think that might be. I'm going to check to see who's presenting, but I think her name sounds familiar. So I will post that in here in a second.
Great. All right. And Maggie gave a positive response about the earthquake clearinghouse request form. And then OGC, and then possibly the maturity matrix. On the maturity matrix concept, and Bob, you were saying that there are other similar but related measurement tools or
Yes.
tricks. If what I would appreciate is if you could let me know, just from a cursory look at them and what you know, if you think that there is a strong case to be made for what those various activities are addressing in terms of trusted data, and what ORLs are addressing in terms of trusted data.
Okay. Yeah, I'll put something together and send it to you.
That'd be great. That'd be great. And I think we could use that then as a criteria then to determine if we address it at the winter meeting or if we hold off and do it as a follow-on webinar just so that we can be more aware of these similar but different measuring activities going on.
Sounds good.
Good. All right.
Sounds to me, Karen, like, if we want to give more time to the OGC folks as we find out more information, that, we should just sketch out that time period for the meeting, and then, see how best it goes from there.
Yes. Yeah, I think, well, for one thing, if there are some OGC folks who are local to the area, so, they might be able to come to the meeting fairly more easily than others. And we could also determine if there would be a good reason to have a follow-up session with them later in the year.
Yeah, that sounds good to me too.
Yeah. All right. And so I think what would be ideal is to look at our 90 minutes. And if we had, I think what I will do is follow up regarding the natural language processing approach to extracting semantic information from end user documentation to establish their vocabulary and the relationship of their words to each other and to other groups. So that activity I'll follow up with Sophie and kind of make a determination as to how valuable that would be at our winter meeting. I'm gonna pull up my whole there we go. Okay, so I think maybe open it up for some other comments. Jessica, I don't know if you can set up the page so we can see all of the talks, the potential talks, and just get a little feedback from everybody here regarding the scope and if there's something missing that we should tackle, or if there's a recommendation to pull any other topics for later. It would be nice to leave a good 20 minutes at the end for talking about where we go next. What we can discern from these various activities and what really should be our next action with pursuing operational readiness levels. There it is.
Karen, maybe we can talk also about some of the plans that AHC, the All Hazards Consortium, has with getting ORL levels into different operational environments. Maybe we can, I don't know if, I don't want to suggest another speaker in our session, but maybe we can just do some intelligence gathering on where that's headed so we can share that with the group too.
That's good. It is good. So yeah, we looked at using the winter meeting really to mature the ORLs and really look at the ORLs as within a framework for different applications. And so looking at the crosswalk topics addresses kind of the front end of that problem, which is communicating with the user community. But there's a lot more to the whole process. I think we saw some similarities of the process between the all hazards community and Maggie's earthquake clearinghouse group, and that you really need to understand the problem. And so we use use cases, and I know like cascade rising activity, those exercises are kind of like going through a simulation. You have to first define the use cases within that simulation, and then identify the data, figure out how the data is shared, what kind of platform. All Hazards has the dashboard, that technology then that allows the end users to exercise the data, evaluate it, and then in the All Hazards case, we heard from Carrie Hicks at Duke about her work in providing the tool, and she again has a whole process for assigning operational readiness levels to data for a specific event that they exercised. So there's this whole process that we've kind of introduced as a framework, that the communications of the data is the heart of it, but it goes through this whole process, and ideally that would be a process that can be replicated more easily in other disaster applications. So I bring that up to say, I don't know how, based on the talks that we have here, if we can kind of move in that direction during the discussion. Or even, I guess, before we get to discussing it, is it a good idea that we pursue ORLs as this framework? Any comments?
This is Dave. I think it's a great idea. I mean, I think what we're going to probably see with ORLs, Karen, is that All Hazards Consortium and Duke and other organizations are going to really take and run with it, even DHS. So I think it's going to be really important for us to remain ahead of them because they're going to be coming back to us and asking what kind of refinement activities we've done and what are our thoughts for ORLs. We think they're going to be different for different application levels. They're certainly going to be different for use in research, but it's really being driven by the operational folks that want to trust data. So I think we could be in a really good spot by just remaining a little bit ahead of them, so we can think of the things that they might ask and address them, during each one of our meetings, at each different ESIP meeting.
Yeah, that's a good point. It makes puts us in a proactive role, which I think is good for ESIP.
Yeah, I just don't want to get sort of like hunkered down and really study, focusing on one thing, and then the operational crowd gets way ahead of us, and we're like, oh well, we didn't really think of that because we're working on this. So it's going to be important to remain kind of aware of what All Hazards is doing and DHS is deciding, because they're just ramping up in their interest on the ESIP Federation. So we have to make sure that we're level with them, or hopefully a little bit ahead.
Yeah, yeah, that is a good point. And really, I do think that DHS would be a good partner to have at ESIP, and this might be a good way to show them that their involvement would be really valuable here.
Definitely. That's why having Greg there might really give us some good input and guidance too. I'll be quiet so others can talk. I'm actually going to have to disconnect here in just a second so I can get on the road.
Okay, yeah, and we're just about to wrap up. Do you think we should pull together a couple of slides to describe that framework? Maybe use that for leading the discussion at the end. About ideas from anyone else who on the line still.
Karen, this is Megan. I can't comment in detail about your ideas. I'm very excited about several of them, and I hope that you get some assistance in narrowing it down. I can say a couple of things. Sophie Howe has proposed an entire session about usability, and so you may be able to gather some ideas from that session, about whether it's appropriate for your group. On the other hand, I would love if you interacted with her, because they really are looking for projects, and I think what you're talking about is very much in the realm of what they're looking to try to help with. On the kind of a different end of things I have to say, sorry, it's late on the East Coast. Registration for ESIP, the early registration deadline, we just extended it to December 21st, but that is approaching very quickly. I'm very excited about all these people you're talking about potentially inviting in, and from an ESIP perspective, we love if you make new connections and pull new people in. We're really trying to get our registration numbers up, and they're not, I think we're at 70 people right now, so we are trying to make a big push to grow that. So anything you can do to make those invitations soon would be much appreciated.
Thank you. Good point.
Hey, Megan, I have a quick question for you. This is Dave.
Yep.
We invite Greg McShane from DHS. He may just show up for that 2-hour session for the breakout, depending on his availability. What's the situation with him having to register?
There is a 1-day registration rate. I don't recall at the moment what it actually is, but give me.
I'm just thinking more along the lines of if he's there to provide us with information and input. I don't know, if having to register and pay for that day is going to be a deterrent or not.
Yeah, I can definitely find out for you what we've been able to accommodate in the past. I'm kind of a newbie here, but I'll find out and let you know.
Sure, no worries. Thanks.
All right. Well, do we have, thank you, Megan. And we have any other comments? It's just about the end of our hour.
Karen, you were asking a second ago if, in terms of just getting started on this. I think, we plan on talking after this meeting anyway, so we can start planning out this talk as well. So for AGU and for ESIP meeting, so I can help you out with that PowerPoint too.
Oh, good. Thanks, Jessica. Yep, we'll be talking momentarily.
Yep.
All right. Well, I hope everybody can sign up for the ESIP meeting in January, and I hope to see some of you at AGU. In fact, can people say if they're going to be at AGU before we log out here?
This is Bob Downs. I'll be there.
Oh, yes.
And Bob Chen.
Oh, good.
I'll be at Maggie will be there. Yeah.
Mhm.
I will definitely be at AGU, and ESIP is hosting the data fair and the data help desk, so you can look for that in the exhibit hall booth number 513. If you'd like to see me, I'll be there pretty much the whole week.
Oh, good. I will.
And also, of course, there will be Ignite at AGU, the lightning talks on Wednesday evening, and a number of other. We're pulling together an ESIP blast to send out about ESIP related events.
Ah, good. Yeah, I was kind of hoping for that.
Okay, good.
All right. Well, I think everyone, we've got a plan for our for the winter meeting. Appreciate those who've agreed to help contact potential speakers, and we'll be following up with some email. I think we can call it a day.
Thank you very much, Karen.
Yeah, thank you, Karen.
Thanks, Karen.
Great. It was nice hearing from everyone.
Okay.
Bye. See you guys all at the winter meeting and AGU.